guitar the other day. Mazmor Yeshuati L'Kanael Shabeach Tikun Beit Tefilati V'sham Toda Natzabeach Let Takid Matbeach Mitzar Hamikabeach Azigmor B'shir Mizmor Adukat HAMishbeach Azigmor B'shir Mizmor Adukat HAMishbeach. I gotta work on this one. And we only do it like once a year. Rock of ages, let our song praise thy saving power. Thou amidst the raging foes wast our sheltering tower. Furious they assailed us, but thine arm availed us, and thy word broke their sword when our own strength failed us. Kindling new the holy lamps, priests approved in suffering, purified the nation's shrine, brought to God their offering, and his court surrounded, in joy abounding. Happy throngs singing songs with a mighty sounding. Children of the martyr race, whether free or fettered, wake the echoes of the song where you may be scattered. Yours the message cheering that the time is nearing, which will see all men free, tyrants disappearing, which will see all men free, tyrants disappearing. The story of Hanukkah, as it has been passed down to us. Let's do the we kindle the lights and then light the candles. Mostly because we kind of need to know these songs. And these songs, I think Janie has dances too.
Yeah, we kindle, I forget it, but another one I do.
This is kind of our, I know how I'm a seam. It's one of the songs that's done. It's a different version of it though. It's ours. We kindle the lights to remember the miracles of long, long ago. The battles fought, the victories won, the enemies we've overcome by your mighty hand. We kindle the lights to remember the martyrs of long, long ago. The women brave, the warriors true, who took their stand and fought enemies we've overcome by your mighty hand. We kindle the lights to remember the martyrs of long, long ago. The women brave, the warriors true, who took their stand and fought it through for your word's command. So burn the candles brightly, let the whole world know we identify with those of long ago, and we are God's children, children of Abraham. Our adoption has been paid for by the blood of the Lamb. Our adoption has been paid for by the blood of the Lamb. Light the candles, burn them bright, let them shine into the night. Light the candles, make it clear that his return is drawing near, and he will come to light the way, to turn our darkness into day, and he will shine for all to see. Messiah come for you and me. Light the candles, burn them bright, let them shine into the night. Light the candles, make it known that we are his very own, and he has come to light the way, to turn our darkness into day, and we will shine for all to see. Messiah come. Light the candles, burn them bright, let them shine into the night. Light the candles, make it clear, his return is drawing near. Well, I don't do the Shema the way Joy does, but I think we ought to go ahead and blow the shofar into the Shema and see where God takes us today. Because honestly, I don't have a clue. I don't always admit that, but boy, today it's just like, I don't have a clue what he wants to do today.
That's because he's going to change everything.
Is that it? Well, it's been a very weird week. So. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu l'shmoach kol shofar. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with your commandments and has instructed us to hear the voice of the shofar. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Kadosh Kavod, Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'kol levavecha u'v'kol nafshecha u'v'kol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher Eloki mitzvah hayom alav avecha. V'shinatam l'deveta b'tebarta bam, v'shekta v'deveta uvleteka v'yedek v'kshachbeka u'kumheka וקשתם לאט על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם המזוזות ביתך, ובשעריך, ואהבת לרעך כמוך. Hear Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your children. And you shall speak of them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be for frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Let's do Paul Wilbur's version. I don't know why. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Adonai Hear, O Israel, all you chosen ones, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Blessed be your name, glorious kingdom come, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Majesty too great to dwell in temples made of stone. You have chosen hearts of flesh to make your glory known. Let your kingdom come, let your will be done. Wind of heaven blow down, make your presence known. Like an ocean wide, let your glory rise. Cover all the earth, hear, O Israel, our God is one. Hear, O Israel, all you chosen ones, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Faithful Father, Spirit of the Lord, Messiah, Son, our God is one. Majesty too great to dwell in temples made of stone. You have chosen hearts of flesh to make your glory known. Let your kingdom come, let your will be done. Wind of heaven blow, make your presence known. Like an ocean wide, let your glory rise. Cover all the earth, hear, O Israel, our God is one. God is one. Our God is one. Our God is one. You are holy. As for me and my house, we will serve you, As for me and my house, we will serve you, Lord, lifting holy hands in worship. We will not bow down to the gods of men. We will worship the God of Israel. You are holy, holy. There is no one else like you. You are holy, holy. There is no one else like you. Kadosh, Kadosh Ata, Ikamaka Adonai. Kadosh, Kadosh Ata, Ikamaka Adonai. As for me and my house, we will serve you, Lord, lifting holy hands in worship. We will not bow down to the gods of men. We will worship the God of Israel. You are holy, holy. There is no one else like you. You are holy, holy. There is no one else like you. Kadosh, Kadosh Ata, Ikamaka Adonai. Kadosh, Kadosh Ata, Ikamaka Adonai. Choose this day whom you will serve. 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 But as for me and my house, we will serve you, Lord. We will serve you, Lord. We will not bow to the gods of men. We will not bow to the gods of men. We'll worship the God of Israel. We will not bow to the gods of men. We will not bow to the gods of men. We'll worship the God of Israel. We will not bow to the gods of men. We will not bow to the gods of men. We'll worship the God of Israel. We will not bow to the gods of men. We will not bow to the gods of men. We'll worship the God of Israel. And as for me and my house, we will serve you, Lord, lifting holy hands in worship. We will not bow down to the gods of men. We will worship the God of Israel. We will worship the God of Israel. We will worship the God of Israel. That's a good Hanukkah song.
It's a good Hanukkah song.
Then we'll read about it, right? Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God. We offer up our lives as a living sacrifice. Purify us with your holy fire. Holy fire, you are the Holy One, highly exalted One. We've come to worship at your holy hill. You are the Holy One, highly exalted Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God. Come now and fill this place, be exalted in our praise. Let it be known today that you are God. You are God. You are the Holy One, highly exalted One. We've come to worship at your holy hill. You are the Holy One, highly exalted One, and we surrender to your sovereign will. First verse again. Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God. We offer up our lives as a living sacrifice. Purify us with your holy fire. Holy fire, you are the Holy One, highly exalted One. We've come to worship at your holy hill. You are the Holy One, highly exalted One, and we surrender to your sovereign will. You are the Holy One. You are the Holy One, highly exalted One. We've come to worship at your holy hill. You are the Holy One, highly exalted One, and we surrender to your sovereign will. Oh Lord God of Abraham, oh Lord God of Abraham, oh Lord God of Abraham. A Torah portion today. It's kind of an interesting part of the story. I didn't have anybody sign up because I just didn't have it totally sorted in my head. But what I'd like to do is, Craig, have you read the first portion, which is Genesis 32, starting in verse 3 in the Christian Bible, to the end of the chapter. I'll have someone else read chapter 33. Chapter 32, verse 3 to the end of the chapter.
Then Jacob sent messengers before him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, in the country of Edom. He also commanded them, saying, Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, Thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen and donkeys and flocks and male and female servants, and I have sent to tell my lord that I may find favor in your sight. The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, We came to your brother Esau, and furthermore he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people who were with him, and the flocks, and the herds, and the camels, into 2 companies. For he said, If Esau comes to the one company and attacks it, then the company which is left will escape. Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, Return to your country and to your relatives, and I will prosper you. I am unworthy of all the loving kindness and of all the faithfulness which you have shown to your servant. For with my staff only I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 companies. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he will come back and attack me, and the mothers with their children. For you said, I will surely prosper you, and make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which is too great to be numbered. So he spent the night there. Then he selected from what he had with him a present for his brother Esau: 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. He delivered them into the hand of his servants, every drove by itself. And he said to his servants, Pass on before me and put a space between droves. He commanded the one in front, saying, When my brother Esau meets you and asks you, saying, To whom do you belong, and where are you going, and to whom do these animals in front of you belong? Then you shall say, These belong to your servant Jacob. It is a present sent to my lord Esau, and behold, he is also behind us. Then he commanded also the second and the third, and all those who followed the droves, saying, After this manner you shall speak to Esau when you find him, and you shall say, Behold, your servant Jacob is also behind us. For he said, I will appease him with the present that goes before me. Then afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present passed on before him, while he himself spent that night in the camp. Now he arose in that same night, and took his 2 wives and his 2 maids and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and he sent across whatever he had. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of his thigh. So the socket of Jacob's thigh was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Then he said, Let me go, for the dawn is breaking. But he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, What is your name? And he said, Jacob. He said, Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him and said, Please tell me your name. But he said, Why is it that you ask my name? And he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been preserved. Now the sun rose upon him just as he crossed over Peniel, and he was limping on his thigh. Therefore to this day the sons of Israel do not eat the sinew of the hip, which is on the socket of the thigh, because he touched the socket of Jacob's thigh in the sinew of the hip.
Who would like to read chapter 33 for us? Chris, would you?
Then Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 maids. He put the maids and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. But he himself passed on ahead of them, and bowed down to the ground 7 times, until he came near to his brother. Then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. He lifted his eyes and saw the women and the children, and said, Who are these with you? So he said, The children whom God has graciously given your servant. Then the maids came near with their children, and they bowed down. Leah likewise came near with her children, and they bowed down. And afterward Joseph came near with Rachel, and they bowed down. And he said, What do you mean by all this company which I have met? And he said, To find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have be your own. Jacob said, No, please. If now I have found favor in your sight, then take my present from my hand. For I see your face, as one sees the face of God, and you have received me favorably. Please take my gift, which has been brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have plenty. Thus he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, Let us take our journey and go, and I will go before you. And he said to him, My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and herds which are nursing are a care to me. And if they are driven hard, one day all the flocks will die. Please let my Lord pass on before his servant, and I will proceed at my leisure according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord at Seir. Esau said, Please, let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. But he said, What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. Jacob journeyed to Succoth, and built for himself a house, made booths for his livestock there, and the place is named Succoth. Now Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. When he came from Padan Aram and camped before the city, he bought the piece of land there where he had pitched his tent from the hand of the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected there an altar and called it El Elohe Israel.
Jenny, you want to read a HAFTARAH portion for us today? We're going to read Obadiah. And Obadiah is only one chapter. And that is the standard Torah portion, HAFTARAH portion today.
The vision of Obadiah. Thus says the Lord God concerning Edom. We have heard a report from the Lord, and an envoy has been sent among the nations, saying, Arise, and let us go against her for battle. Behold, I will make you small among the nations. You are greatly despised. The arrogance of your heart has deceived you, you who live in the clefts of the rock, in the loftiness of your dwelling place, who say in your heart, Who will bring me down to earth? Though you build high like the eagle, though you set your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord. If thieves came to you, if robbers by night, oh how you would be ruined. Would they not steal only until they had enough? If grape gatherers came to you, would they not leave some gleanings? Oh how Esau will be ransacked, and his hidden treasures searched out. All the men allied with you will send you forth to the border, and the men at peace with you will deceive you and overpower you. They who eat your bread will set an ambush for you. There is no understanding in him. Will I not on that day, declares the Lord, destroy wise men from Edom and understanding from the mountain of Esau? Then your mighty men will be dismayed, O Taman, so that everyone may be cut off from the mountain of Esau by slaughter. Because of violence to your brother Jacob, you will be covered with shame, and you will be cut off forever. On the day that you stood aloof, on the day that strangers carried off his wealth, and foreigners entered his gates, and cast lots for Jerusalem, you too were as one of them. Do not gloat over your brother's day, the day of his misfortune, and do not rejoice over the sons of Judah in the day of their destruction. Yes, do not boast in the day of their distress. Do not enter the gate of my people in the day of their disaster. Yes, you, do not gloat over their calamity in the day of their disaster, and do not loot their wealth in the day of their disaster. Do not stand at the fork of the road to cut down their fugitives, and do not imprison their survivors in the day of their distress. For the day of the Lord draws near on all the nations. As you have done, it will be done to you. Your dealings will return on your own head. Because just as you drank on my holy mountain, all the nations will drink continually. They will drink and swallow and become as if they had never existed. But on Mount Zion there will be those who escape, and it will be holy. And the house of Jacob will possess their possessions. Then the house of Jacob will be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. But the house of Esau will be as stubble, and they will set them on fire and consume them, so that there will be no survivor of the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken. Then those of the Negev will possess the mountain of Esau, and those of the Shephelah, the Philistine plain, also possess the territory of Ephraim and the territory of Samaria, and Benjamin will possess Gilead. And the exiles of this host of the sons of Israel, who are among the Canaanites as far as Zarephath, and the exiles of Jerusalem who are in Sepharad, will possess the cities of the Negev. The deliverers will ascend Mount Zion to judge the mountain of Esau, and the kingdom will be the Lord's.
And then for our apostolic writings, Bob, would you kindly read for us? It'll be in Matthew. You're going to have to find it because I didn't preset it. It's Matthew 2:13 through 23. It's Matthew chapter 2, and I think it's appropriate for this time of year. In fact, all of these readings are very appropriate for this time of year. Matthew 2:13 through 23.
Now when they had gone, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him. So Joseph got up and took the child and his mother while it was still night, and left for Egypt. He remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Out of Egypt I called my son. Then when Herod saw that he had been tricked by the Magi, he became very enraged and slew all the male children who were in Bethlehem and its vicinity from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the Magi. Then what had been spoken through Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. A voice heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and she refused to be comforted because they were no more. But when Herod died, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's life are dead. So Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in the place of his father, Herod, he was afraid to go there. And after being warned by God in a dream, he left for the region of Galilee, and came and lived in a city called Nazareth. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophets. he shall be called a Nazarene.
So I don't know about you, but when I was reading all this stuff this week, I was at a total loss. It's like, okay, how does this fit together? What does this have to do with each other? Except for the fact that we have the picture, and I think this is exactly where it comes to. The picture that God's people, in the person of Jacob, had been taken into a different place, had been taken out of the land, out of the promise, away from the land of promise. And as he was away from the land of promise, this is where he met his brides. This is where he began building the promise that God had given him. Even though he's out of the land of promise, this is still in the midst of the struggle, in the midst of the fight. God was still building the promise. Do you remember when he had to leave because he stole the blessing, right? And the blessing basically said, may God give you the dew from heaven, the riches of the earth, the grain and wine in abundance. May people serve you and nations bow to you. May you be Lord over your kinsmen. Let your mother's descendants bow to you. And cursed be anyone who curses you, and blessed be anyone who blesses you. This was the blessing that Isaac had meant to give to Esau, but ended up giving to Jacob through the deception. And because of the deception, Esau got a little bit upset, which makes perfect sense to me. You know, someone steals something that's mine, or I perceive that they have taken something that was meant for me, I'm going to be a little angry with them. If you're not angry over things like that, then there's something not quite right. Because anger is a sign that something's wrong, and it is a wrong thing to take and to steal. And Esau already had sold his birthright, but now he loses the blessing. And because of that, Jacob has to flee, and he leaves the land of promise. But even as he left the land of promise, even as he went, and even as he pursued doing the right thing in the right place, God blessed him abundantly. And we talked last week about how God took the blessing that should have been Esau's by right of firstborn and gave it to Jacob. He took the blessing from Laban even and gave it to Jacob, because Jacob ends up being enriched by all the stuff that Laban was losing. Why? Because Laban was not honoring God. He chose not to follow God, and he'd been given that option. And because he was messing with the one that was chosen by God, he suffered the repercussions of it. We're told that he changed the wages 10 times. So he was kind of playing around and messing with the chosen one of God. And as he did so, he lost and lost and lost and lost. And that is exactly what God says is going to happen. If you mess with my people, you will lose. It may look like you're winning for a season, but you're going to lose. You're going to lose. When Jacob returns and goes back home, he does it in stages. But one of the interesting things to me is he begins by saying, okay, I'm headed back. My brother's probably might still be mad at me, right? What do I need to do about that? And he begins with prayer, and then he keeps going with a plan, and then he wrestles through that plan with God. Do you see that pattern at all? He sends messengers ahead to tell Esau that he's coming back. And this is what you're supposed to say. Your servant. Wait a minute. Who was told they would be the servant? Esau, right? So Jacob is reversing. And he's saying, you know what? I am your servant. Your servant has been living with Laban and has stayed until now, and I have cattle, donkeys, flocks, male, female servants. I'm sending to tell you news that I might win your favor. In other words, I'm coming back. I have been blessed, and I have a lot to bring with me, but I'm coming back. I am your servant. Esau's response is kind of interesting, because he finds out, and he gathers his men and starts coming back. We are never told if Esau is coming back to fight Jacob, or if he's just worried that Jacob's going to come and attack him. So he's coming back with his defense. We don't know, because we're never told what his thinking is. But he gets his men around him. He says, okay, I'll go meet my brother, but I'm not going by myself. Do you ever have to go meet somebody and you really don't want to go by yourself? Because sometimes there's hard feelings. Sometimes there's difficulty. When I've done counseling and working with couples through separation, through divorce, through child exchanges, I've always told the woman, especially if this comes in, if there's been an abusive situation, and most of the time if I'm counseling in that environment, there's been an abusive situation. I always tell her, take a friend with you. When you go to exchange the children, have a friend, a neutral party. Have somebody else with you. If you're going to meet with him, meet in a public place. Do it where somebody else is with you. You need to protect yourself, right? It's kind of a logical thinking, but it does two things. If you have someone with you that you respect, that helps restrain your responses as much as it restrains the other person's response. So you're less reactive because you've got somebody else there to be a support. We don't know whether Esau is coming out to wipe him out or if Esau's just coming with friends to make sure things stay calm. We don't know. But we know that Jacob gets afraid, and probably rightly so. And he begins to think, and he says, okay, so if Esau comes and we have one big camp, tell you what, let's divide, let's split up. Let's split up into different, so that if he comes and attacks, at least somebody can get away. Whoever gets attacked, they can fight him off and the other guys can get out of here, right? Let's use some wisdom. And Jacob puts together a plan that's actually pretty smart. And then Jacob prays, which he's already prayed once, but now he's praying again. And this time he's saying, okay, God, I need your help. I can come up with these plans. You gave me a brain, I come up with a good plan, but I need your help, right? And I think that's exactly kind of how we approach the struggles and the stress of life. Most of the time we can come up with a good plan, right? I'm good at plans, aren't I, Craig? There's plan A. When that goes through, it's plan B. Then I don't know what plan we're on with the house at this point.
Which one are you on now?
I have lost track.
R.257.
R.2D2.
R2D2. That's something God has gifted me with, is a mentality or a mindset to go into chaotic situation and organize it. I don't know where that came from. You can't tell by the looks of my house today, because it is more chaos than I've ever had. My office is more chaos than I've ever had. It's driving me crazy. But our life has been chaos, has it not? Right? I mean, if something can come, I just am like, I'm done trying to make plans, Lord. What are you doing? And Jacob got in this place. He made a plan, which is not a bad thing. Don't discredit that. Because we have to know what to do. And that's something God's gifted us with, to use the mind God gave us. I have a friend that belongs to a church that's very liberal, but there's something that I really appreciated about this congregation and something that they say. And it's like, don't check your brain at the door. When you approach the study of God's word, don't check your brain at the door. Approach it with your mind as well as your heart. And I think that's a legitimate thing. Because if we don't, then we end up off balance. God gave us a mind for a reason. He gave us intelligence for a reason. He gave us creativity for a reason. He gave us gifts and skills in administration, or gifts and skills in compassion. He gave us our gifts and our skills for a reason, and he wants us to use them. Jacob is using his skill, comes up with a plan, and then he says, Lord God, God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, the one who told me, return to your country and your kinsmen, and I will do good for you. Okay, so he's reminding himself who God is. Do you ever do that in your prayers? I do that all the time. Why? Because sometimes we forget who God is. So it's not that God needs to know who he is as much as we need to be reminded of who he is. God, you are the God of my fathers. You're the God who took care of them. You are the God who did all of that. You're the God that told me to do this. You're the God that's led me this direction. You're the God who promised me good. This is you. I'm talking to you, right? I am not worthy of all the love and faithfulness you've shown your servant. There's a humility that Jacob shows here. Since I crossed the Jordan with only my staff, but now I have become two camps, please rescue me from my brother Esau. I am afraid of him. I'm afraid he's going to attack me without regard for the mothers of the children. And you said, I will certainly do you good and make your descendants as numerous as the grains of sand by the sea. And there are so many they cannot be counted. So you said, God, I am afraid, but you said, and I know that you've done it in the past, so you're going to do it again. And I've got this plan, but Lord, I need you. Then it says he stayed there that night, and then he chose from among his possessions the following as a present for Esau. And there's this whole list, okay? And in fact, even as this is laid out, husbandry today, the taking care of flocks and sheep and camels and goats and all of these things are done in this manner. 200 goats, female goats, and 20 males. If you want your sheep, your goats, to be able to produce and reproduce and reproduce, that's a minimal balance. You have to have the male and the female, right? 200 to 20. Oh, wow. 30 milk camels and their colts, their babies. 40 cows, camels, and their babies. 40 cows and 10 bulls. 20 female donkeys, 10 colts. And he turns them over and he sends them ahead, bit by bit by bit, right? He sends gifts to his brother. Well, what's he sending to his brother? He's sending all of those blessings that his father had promised on him. He is sending to Esau the ability to follow through and receive all those blessings too. The ability to produce, the ability to have great riches. I've given you the riches of the earth, the grain in abundance. He's giving him back to Esau that which Esau perceives he had stolen from him. There's a Torah truth in this. When God gives the law to Moses at Mount Sinai, and he talks about if someone has stolen, they are to repay, and there's a percentage. If you've stolen, and I didn't look it up, I should have, but I didn't. but you repay, and you repay with more. So if someone stole $10 from you, they owe you 15. So I not only pay back the 10, but I'm supposed to, reparation, I'm supposed to make it right. Because with that 10, you could have done better, but you didn't, so I'm going to give you 10 plus. That's a Torah truth.
So is that what the enemy has to do?
And that is what the enemy who has stolen from us has to do too, because that's God's law. You're absolutely right.
Wow.
But what we see here is that Jacob, before that law is given, is doing the exact same thing. He is fulfilling the commandment of God by returning to his brother Esau. That which Esau perceived as stolen, whether it was actually stolen or not, is not the issue. The issue is Esau perceived it as such. So he's making it right. He is humbling himself before his brother, calling himself the servant of Esau. He is repaying him with enough camels, enough sheep, enough of all of this that Esau can become a very wealthy man. If he isn't already. He is, though. That's what he says. And then he instructs the servant, when Esau, my brother, meets you and says, whose servant are you? Where are you going? And whose animals are these? Then say, they belong to your servant. He's reminding him, your servant Jacob. And they are a present he has sent to my Lord Esau. Your servant to my Lord. This is a reversal of that blessing. He is calling Esau Lord. He is humbling himself. And they all cross, and then he wrestles with the angel. He wrestles. And he doesn't win, but he doesn't lose. And because he's willing to wrestle this through, he is given an additional blessing. His name is changed. He becomes Israel instead of Jacob. You have shown your strength to God and men, and you have prevailed. He wrestles.
Did they say who the angel was?
Nope. There are multiple teachings on that. I grew up and kind of, because it's the angel of the Lord, there was this concept that was a pre-incarnate Yeshua, that's who he wrestled with. It says messenger here in this translation. He got up, let's see, then Jacob was left alone, and some man wrestled with him until daybreak. Then the man said, let me go. Jacob said, I won't let you go until you bless me. And the man asked, what is your name? And then when he asked the man's name, the man says, what do you need my name for? Don't ask me my name. And he blessed him. An angel of the Lord, a representative in traditional Judaism. Some believe that was the spirit of Esau, sent ahead of Esau to wrestle with the spirit of Jacob. And that this was a wrestling in the spiritual realm of the two brothers wrestling. And I don't know. It doesn't tell us.
Is there anybody that says it could have been Michael?
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, because Michael is the angel of Israel, wasn't he?
Right. He is the protector of Israel. He is the
And that was
archangel over that nation.
And that was when he became Israel.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. We don't know.
Right, and we probably won't until
You're right.
Christ comes again, but
We can become convicted. We can become convinced. We can argue. I've heard arguments on multiple sides on it. And it doesn't say in this portion. And I don't have in the notes here where else it's discussed.
is it discussed anywhere like in Jasher or Jubilees or?
I believe it is. What we do have here is that Jacob calls the place Peniel, face of God, because I have seen God face to face, yet my life was spared.
And when Michael comes and stands on the earth in Revelation, doesn't he come from before God with a face like God too?
Yeah.
It's like pretty.
And so Jacob felt like he had seen God. And in wrestling with this man, he's wrestled. But part of what I see in it is not so much who is that, but are we willing to wrestle through the promises too? And that's where I'm at. Wrestling through the promise. This promise has been given, but it's certainly not evident. God works. He's been working. You know, he hasn't left us totally abandoned, although sometimes it feels that way. I'm very thankful for family. But he's wrestled it through. And when he sees his brother, after he's wrestled through the promise, he sees his brother, and then it's the next thing it says is he divides the children up, and he sends them in groups. Leah and Rachel and the 2 slave girls. Notice here he still calls them slaves. In the passage before it says that Leah gave her servant as a wife to her husband, but she's still a slave. They were never really raised to the level of wives. But they're slave girls, so he puts them first, Bilhah and their children first, and so they come in groups, right? And each group bows themselves on the ground 7 times. That's what they're to do. He breaks them into groups, then he goes in front of them, he bows himself 7 times, approaches his brother, runs, and Esau runs to meet him. Whose are these? And then he brings them forward and they prostrate themselves. What are they doing? They are bowing down to Esau. What was the promise that Jacob was given? Your brothers will bow down to you. Nations will bow down to you. Well, Jacob is doing this for Esau. He is again repaying to Esau that which Esau felt was stolen from him. Each of those sons represent a nation. They bow before Esau. And the 2 are reunited. Now, when that's all done, and they make agreement with each other, and they celebrate the fact that they're there, I find it very interesting. Esau goes back home. Jacob camps. He camped. He went a little bit farther. He went to Shechem, but he does not return right away where he is supposed to be going. So he's done all this stuff right, but he doesn't return. And because he doesn't return, in the next chapter we have some things that happen. One of the things that we know when Israel came out of Egypt generations later is that the descendants of Esau did not treat them well. They did not respond with kindness, did not respond with goodness. When Yaakov was being fought against, the descendants of Esau gloated over that. And that's what it talks about in Obadiah when it says, don't gloat over your brother's falling. Don't gloat on their day of disaster. Don't rejoice when I rebuke Judah. Don't do that. Don't speak arrogantly. When God is disciplining his people, we need to be very careful not to add to that and criticize that and gloat over that. When Jacob returns to Esau, he returns with humility. He returns with gifts. He returns with love. He returns with respect. When we've had a falling out with someone, we need to return with love and respect. It's not always easy. Esau wasn't always a good guy, was he? But Jacob still returned to him with respect and with honor. That's what I saw in all of this. It's not a lot. I don't have a good conclusion. But what I have is the understanding that God's word still speaks to us today. And I don't know how that applies to what you're going through. I know that part of it applies to what we're going through in terms of the wrestling through the promises. Holding on to the promises. Knowing that God is blessing and He will bless and He will continue to bless. I believe God blessed Jacob's plans. I believe God will bless what we're doing or trying to do. And we just keep going. But we need to do so with respect to all those around us. Even those who've come to us in the last, or come to me or whatever. I don't know if anybody said anything to Craig, but I know I've had people tell me, well, this is all happening because you missed it. And people have wonderful ideas, you know. And I look and I go, yeah, well, if I missed it, he would have told me. Yeah, we have a lot of Job's friends. Do you have a lot of Job's types friends? The types of friends like Job has? That put the blame, that want to say, well, you've got a sin, or you've got this wrong, or you've got something wrong, or this wouldn't be happening. And I'm like, I've asked the Lord. We've asked the Lord. Do you think God wouldn't tell us? He would, because He loves us. We're His children. If we have something that needs to be shifted or changed, He would tell us. I really believe that. But He hasn't. And every time I think it's time to give up, it's time to quit, it's time to whatever, God brings all these confirmations. Don't you do it. Don't quit, don't quit, don't quit. Yeah, I mean, and it's like, okay, Lord, whatever. But the day is coming that the blessing will be here.
Yes.
It will be. It will be. Jacob eventually ends up back at Bethel, which is where he is supposed to be going in all of this. Eventually he does end up back at Bethel. And God appears to him again there. And God reconfirms the promise. Reconfirms. I don't think we are camped outside of the wrong place. He would have told us. But I do know that He reconfirms and reconfirms and reconfirms and reconfirms His promises. So no matter what it looks like, no matter what it feels like, we keep going. Joseph, with the child Jesus, the baby Yeshua, is told by angels in a dream to take the child and go to Egypt for a while. God gives him direction and he follows it. And each step that he follows fulfills a prophecy. Each step that he follows fulfills a prophetic word. It fulfills something else. It's more proof, more proof, more proof of who Jesus is as Messiah. So I am looking at what we're going through and going, okay, Lord, I want to see the proofs. I want to be able to look back and see the proof of who you are in each step. Because that's what he did for them. And if he's the same God yesterday, today, and forever, which he is, then he'll do it for us too. There's proof. God is God. And God is faithful. And he will see us through. And even if we end up in a place like Nazareth, which is not a bad place necessarily, Nazareth means branch. It's a reference to being a branch of the house of David. That's why he went to Nazareth, because he is a branch of the house of David. In each thing that God does, I believe we're going to see something. So I'm going to ask you guys to pray that we will see it soon. The fulfillment will be there soon. And that the blessings of God will be evident, not just to us, but to everyone around us. That's what I'm asking for. Craig asked me the other day, what do you want for your birthday? That's what I want. I don't think you can give me that. But God can, and he will. And I know he will. Maybe not this year. Maybe next year. He will show us. He will prove himself. He always has, and he always will. Father, I want to thank you for your word. Thank you for your truth. Thank you that you speak to us and you teach us and you strengthen us. And I ask for that to continue. For each one of us here, I know we are all going through different things. The enemy is attacking each one of us in different ways. So I ask for your strengthening for each one of us. Father, that you will lift us up in this day of trouble. That you will give us the perseverance that we need. That you will give us the hope that we need. That we do not lose focus and lose the vision of that hope that you have called us to. That we will speak that out in this year, in this season. I thank you for the promise of Hanukkah that is coming up. That as we dedicate ourselves to you and rededicate ourselves to you and purify our hearts before you, that you will honor that and you will bless that. And I thank you. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, our Lord and our Savior. The Lord bless you.
Lord bless you.
And keep you.
And keep you.
The Lord make his face to shine upon you. The Lord bless you.
The Lord bless you.
And keep you.
And keep you.
The Lord make his face to shine upon you. And be gracious unto you. And be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up,
The Lord lift up
his countenance on you and give you peace. Shabbat Shalom.